We have the album folks here. 3 of the greatest men in all of the world, actually. But I'm going to say Utah's tech community, just to narrow it down. Just so nobody gets a little bit too big of an ego this early in the morning. But these are great men. We got Diogo, we got John, and we got Sid here. We have known each other since the beginning of this thing, right? Like, I think when you first announced the fund, I think I maybe was the one who wrote about it in Beehive Startups.
That's right.
Sure. Isn't that crazy?
That's right.
And I mean, that was like 2013, wasn't it?
2014.
14?
Yeah.
14. And now, and then the next year we created Silicon Slopes and put Beehive Startups inside that. So we're a decade into this thing now on the Silicon Slope side. And you guys are, a little over a decade into the fund. Sid, let's start with you. Just like, how are you feeling, man? It's like at a decade when a fund, you like know whether you've hit your groove or not. That's what everyone says.
Takes a while.
Yeah. I mean, I think grateful, beginning with John and Diogo, we found each other. We didn't know each other. It's kind of like a lot of the tech stories where somebody met in college, somebody met while they were working at a certain startup, and so grateful. And then really it's like founders, same thing. Grateful for, from Eric Ray, to the whatever the latest deal we did was, those founders are the men and women in the arena. So super grateful.
Was Podium the first investment?
Yeah.
It's a great first investment.
It's a great first investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Worked out well.
That's very cool. John, how about you? How are you feeling as you reflect on this?
Yeah, I think we're, in a lot of ways, feel like we're just getting started. I think the first 10 years was a little bit of us finding our own styles, our own sync, what we're passionate about, a little bit of shedding insecurities and doing it not out of fear now, but out of just the sheer joy of it and love. And just we really enjoy working together. So I think we've also found we just have a really good safety within this partnership where we can kind of tell each other we're stupid. And you know what I mean? Like, often we, you bring a deal in, we get passionate about it. We all have very different styles. Like, I won't bore you with kind of our different styles, but we kind of know what makes each other tick, and we can kind of make fun of each other for those reasons and make sure we're not just being making bad decisions. So the next 10 years is going to be good.
Yeah. The partnership really, you guys are 3 very different people, which is really interesting. And it's cool the way you complement each other as well because of that, right? And you got like the nicest guy in the world here, Diogo, who everyone loves. I don't know anybody who doesn't love Diogo. Right. Not just like.
There's a short list.
Love this guy. And he's a newly an American citizen, right?
As of a year ago. Yeah.
As of a year ago. What's that year been like?
It's been remarkable. Sid and John have pointed out that I'm much calmer now, which is true. Every time I left the country for the past 12 to 14 years, I've been stopped and sent to secondary inspection. That no longer happens. It's actually really exciting not to have to wait for about an hour for someone to come check your record and make sure you're not doing anything illegal. And there's a calm that comes from knowing that you're not going to get kicked out of the country. It may sound small,
but it's real.
It's a big deal.
We talk about it. Like his cortisol has, and like scratching the head, or like Diogo had these things that I think were real coping for just stress of life, but for sure exacerbated by like that extra weight of nothing certain and the blessing of citizenship.
18 months into citizenship. So
that's so
really
cool.
Exciting. Yeah.
Well, welcome to America.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's really good to be here.
I say welcome to America. When you got here, though, you didn't even speak English. Am I right?
Just barely. Yeah.
And now you're like an incredible speaker.
That's kind of you.
You speak better than any of us.
I don't know about that, but that's very kind of you. I think what happens with every newcomer is they need to find a reason to live. And I would truly say I found that in startups and with my partners. So,
Yeah. Real quick, give us your reflection on VC and investing and everything. And I know that you started out with the great Warren Osborne, who's no longer with us. Give us a sense for your journey here.
Yeah, but my sense on that is probably that there's no other place in the world where you would have this kind of fertile ground for startups as in the United States. Just take Brazil, for example, where accounting rules aren't really set up as, generally as they are here. Literally, there's no such thing as a GAAP system, as a generally accepted accounting principles. So when you look at different books of different companies, they may literally tell different stories. And you really need to understand how people are doing books. And that might be the first deal killer for anyone trying to make an investment. I would say my journey was just a lucky one in that I did find Warren, or Warren found me. I learned a lot from him. He's a great Jedi master, and I was a pretty good Padawan, I would say. But maybe more importantly, having this fertile ground to work and to build just brings so much gratitude to my heart. There are very few places in the world where you can build as you can build in the United States, period. Yeah. So.
And what about Utah, Sid? Like, Utah's changed so dramatically in this decade.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? Like, I remember like 2014, 2015, like this time frame, if we're going back in time, nobody was really doing events.
Mm-hmm.
Like those were kind of rare.
Mm-hmm.
And, particularly that kind of bigger gatherings and stuff, but even like the smaller stuff, nobody was really doing stuff. Now they're ubiquitous. You can go to 4 events tonight if you wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
And so that shows like some maturation of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And, more money's coming in here, both outside and inside. More funds have been created,
Mm-hmm.
in that time, which is interesting. We've gotten better at other things, other verticals than just software as a service, which is a new thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was only software as a service back then.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten really good at fintech, and which is still, in the SaaS realm, but and
Mm-hmm.
consumer, we're really good at that. Just give me your sense, like, where are we at?
Mm-hmm. I think startup hasn't gotten any easier from then to now. I think it's more accessible. I think if you want to learn as a college student, as somebody working in a company, big or small, somebody middle-aged who's just wants to make a big move, I think your ability to find people that want to talk about this, to find sources of capital from really early. We have just blocks down the road, iHub. You have groups like that are like, hey, office space, not far from there is Kiln. You have plenty of people who will say, set up shop, put up your little shingle within our shingle. And you have more sources of capital, from small dollars to bigger dollars, right? Bigger funds than ever, because everybody's just grown their fund size, and you have new entrants to that. So I think, that's how I look at it, is on one hand, nothing's changed. It's still so dang hard. It surprises me. You would think that even for us, like seeing deals that in our brains, it would like get easier, and it doesn't. We sort of look and it's like, don't hold your breath. This is going to be a journey. And that's sobering. For us, it's like realizing that it's about the founders. And so we try to look at that. I also think it being more accessible, there are just more places you can start from, whether that's a specific university, whereas one I think used to dominate and still, is the predominant place where things seem to be starting. That's just changing quickly.
Yeah.
Feels like we're in early innings of still a great stretch in our state.
Yeah. I mean, you got the University of Utah with the Lassonde Institute, which was started within these 10 years. That seems to really be pumping out some really interesting
Mm-hmm.
companies.
Mm-hmm.
You've got UVU, which I think is the most entrepreneurial university in the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
Also the largest university in the state. And then
Mm-hmm.
obviously BYU and everything,
Mm-hmm.
its legacy of doing things. It's pretty remarkable.
That's right.
Like just those 3. And we haven't even talked about Utah State or down there in Utah Tech and what they're doing. And
Yeah.
it's pretty wild here.
Yeah.
John, how are you thinking about, there's a lot of talk right now about the future of venture capital. And maybe this happens in cycles like all the time. Although venture capital is pretty new. It's a pretty new concept, really, if you think about it. How does AI change all of this? Because you can now, if you wanted to, get a lot further without taking money if you know what you're doing?
I think it's kind of a tale of there's kind of two paths here. In a lot of ways, it's not changing anything. I think it's on a gradient though. Early stage, it may take our jobs at some point. Us three, 10 years from now, you may be, maybe done by a bot. But I think the relationship aspect and, kind of getting behind people's stories and dreams is going to persist for a while. But we're not going to be going anywhere for a while as early stage investors, in my opinion. But you are starting to see companies that can do a lot more with less. Also, investment firms that can do a lot more with less. We can research people. We can find signal amongst the noise. You can get distribution in creative ways. And I think there's a brand new opening in some cases against new embedded incumbents where there's a massive consolidation just because AI can do a lot more, and it's kind of pulling the rug out from people that aren't fully adopting it. So that leaves an opening for startups. But I do think I think a lot of the incumbents will benefit as well. They have all the data, they got the context, they've got the massive budgets. So we're gonna continue investing in that. We think it's going to be a massive tailwind for us. Some of our best investments are focused on that. Our new ones and our ones that are Series B through IPO are starting to accelerate. I think Podium's a good example of that.
Yeah,
Filevine's a great example of that, where Filevine was doing great as a case management software. It was no AI, and 2 or 3 years ago, this gift of AI showed up and completely revolutionized the legal space. And we happen to have a lot of legal docs to train AI on. So that has been just an incredible tailwind for us. So that's how we're seeing it. So we're studying up. We've actually invested personally in some of the fundamental models. We haven't done that on the fund side yet, but I think it's just a really great time to be a venture investor or a startup.
Can I add something real quick?
No.
Okay, I won't then.
You're a citizen now, so
there we go. I can speak now. John's point of doing more with less is so true for both venture funds and companies. A couple of interesting examples in that. Album's now closing in on almost $1 billion under management. And that
is incredible.
It's crazy.
Congratulations, guys. My word, that is wild.
And it's still the three of us, right? It's 3 partners with a head of finance and a person that runs the office and a lot of other things that she does wonderfully. But it's 5 people total. And when you think about what can be done with a small team and the kind of founders we're looking for, the founders that can do a lot with a little, that also just resonates with us and how we view the world in these days that kind of beg for efficiency, right? It is, why would you do something with 10 people if you can do it with 5? And we look around and it's really cool to see that firms that we admire, mostly in the Bay Area and the East Coast, they've also kept that leaner model where there are very few people working at them. We really think that the job of supporting the founders comes down to Sid, John, and myself, not looking to have other people to come support these founders. And then on the founder side, there's a phenomenal company just in Springville, Utah, doing almost $5 million in recurring revenue, built with 18 people, and no one knows about them, and it's kind of really cool that happened. Most of it built with just so much efficiency, so much automation, so much grit, if you will, founders that will actually work, all hours of day and night. So, yeah.
But that's also I think speaks to an evolving piece of what we've seen, which is it used to be we make an investment, even a seed investment, and you talk about it. And I think in part it had meaning because even 10 years ago, there was fewer of these things happening, right? When you did StartFest here, there weren't those big events.
That's right.
That was special. Right. I mean, we still remember walking right here on Center Street. The mural, that Tom Bruff was doing, like it was just a vibe. That's changed for us. And I think it's less about album being, super innovative, but we do sort of say now, and I guess, why do you think, D, now we don't talk about those for a while? We're kind of like, stay quiet. Why is that? Like, what is it about that company you mentioned that's, there's plenty you could kind of LinkedIn, LFG it, but that feels, kind of yesteryear. Why is that?
Yeah, I think there's a maybe a desire in all of us to get the recognition, the public recognition, but the reality is the scorecard is kept in private. Those scorecards aren't public, right? So talking publicly about something sometimes might feel good and might be a substitute for things that are actually good.
Yeah.
Good performance by a founder is closing clients. I remember when, a phenomenal founder I have the privilege to still work with, he had just raised a Series A and we were talking about board discipline. And I said, hey, it might be a good idea for you to put a board deck together and send it, a couple days ahead of the board meeting. And, forgive me for saying that. I was young and naive, and that founder responded with, that would be great if you come answer some customer tickets. I'd be happy to do that. And it was a big lesson for me of, he has more important things to do than to, publicly, in this case, literally just to his board, display performance. It was less about displaying performance, more about actual performance. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like I think it's a more company-centric, not even founder-centric, it's a company-centric approach. It's what really benefits the company because, if you're hiring people, maybe you do want some public, and there is a time when it makes sense to have this outward kind of celebration and let people know, sort of ring the bells, like, come here, we have something special. But for a lot of the time, it's like, stay quiet, keep your head down, stay focused
on the customer.
Focus on the customer. Yeah. I feel like it's like a good sports program. Like, my coach would say, like, if you read the newspaper, you're an idiot, and you look at, we have BYU's having a great season, we look at these and I think there's probably a story that's being told internally that they believe and they know you just tune it out. It seems like a lot of, whether it's an athlete or anybody performing at a high level, there's some amount of just quietly do your work.
I think there was a practical reality of capital. It still is hard to raise. Let's be empathetic towards those who can't. But I think there was a practical reality where you raise any money, it's kind of, hey, you got to put your poll up and say, hey, I raised money, therefore I made it through this really rigorous filter. And I need people, to help me build this. And I just think some of those limitations have gone. We have a greater connectivity to other ecosystems at this point. Mm-hmm. Some of the investors, we like to include ourselves in that. We're pretty well connected with a lot of Bay Area folks or other folks, and they have people here weekly. And so, there's just other ways to do it rather than just shout out into the, kind of the digital ether.
Yeah.
And so a seed round is just not that impressive anymore to say something about. And why put a target on your back if you don't need to?
That's a great point. Yeah. That last point was like, why put a target on your back? But also, like, back then it seemed like you needed to do it because you needed to hire. Like, hiring was a big thing. Like, so I got to let people know that I have money where I can hire the best talent. And there was like this big talent grab. Now it's not the case because of AI, right? It's kind of like really interesting.
Oh gosh, we're just looking at that curve, of engineers and the demand for them right now. And it's, it's changing.
Yeah. Engineers were like the kings of the world, right? And, they still are some of them, but you don't need as many, which is really interesting. And so there's not as much need. And then, so if you're not trying to get talent or customers, that'd be another reason to do it, right? To kind of like really like, hey, we're a real company and all that type of stuff. But now everybody knows like, I can trust startups, to do stuff. And so even that's kind of gone. Yeah, it seems like only downside to do that type of stuff. And you guys are not a fund that pumps your chest out ever. It's really interesting. I never see you guys posting on LinkedIn or social media about like, it's really like, which is like now like VCs think they have to be like media companies, which is really interesting. And maybe they do. I don't know. They all have podcasts, like the All In podcast and, all of these various things.
I think it's a strategy. Honestly, it is, there are different strategies to doing venture capital. one of our good friends in the LP world has said that he's looked at, all of the at most of the venture companies that have these, media strategies. And for some of them, it plays out, but for most of them, it actually doesn't. And it's not different than, the other VC strategies, if you will. I think similar to that founder that taught me a lesson on, if you want me to go work on a deck, come here, work with the customers. I think we would say the same. If you want us to be out there in the media, go work with our customers, which really are the entrepreneurs. They are heroes. They're the people that make stuff happen. And we really exist to just support them. So the strategy we adopt is everything we can outsource and not do in order to have time with an entrepreneur, we will prefer not to do it. We will maximize for time with the founders we work with. We will maximize for time available to meet with founders. I mean, just recently, we got an interesting introduction. These really quiet founders building in Salt Lake City and true AI innovation. No one's heard of them. I think people that are busy building aren't busy talking. I think that's what it comes down to.
What I'm noticing is the reason why no one's heard of these folks is you never say who they are. There's this really interesting startup in Springville. And then it's like, okay, so who is
that? That company is called STAT now, STAT. And they do workflow management, if you will, of humans in a hospital clinic. So think of, making sure people are moving as they should and maximizing output in hospital clinics. No one cares about that. It's really boring in a sense to talk about it. Big industry with big needs though. So that founder's making it happen. His name is Alan. Shout out to Alan.
Yeah. Now people know, yeah. So where do you think Utah's at? Just from because we're talking about where venture is generally, but let's kind of localize it a bit to the state of, and I know you guys invest outside of Utah as well.
Yeah.
But Utah's home and where you guys do, the majority of your investments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where are we at right now? And how are you viewing the startup community and what needs to improve and what's doing really well? That's just open for all of you.
I have some thoughts.
Yeah, sure.
I think in a lot of ways, there was a sense that we were kind of out in the West on our own, even 5-10 years ago. I think COVID a little bit blew the top off of that because we had a lot of people come here from the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when you could raise capital. A lot of the great companies, Qualtrics and Omniture, they raised capital from great sources. It wasn't until they were pretty large, but we got a lot of people from outside come in over the last 5 years, and I think the boundaries of Utah have blurred quite a bit, and people don't view it as a flyover state or this hidden gem anymore, or this little backwater that once in a while has a deal. It's just viewed as a kind of an extension of a lot of other communities. It's pretty interconnected. I don't think people make as big a deal that it's their little place they fly to anymore. It's just it almost blends with the Bay Area in a way.
Yeah.
We happen to be here because we all live here, and we happen to think we've got great access to great founders, and we think the next 10 years we're going to continue to produce. We've had good outcomes, very good outcomes, but I think there's going to continue to be more billion-dollar companies, and we haven't seen a lot of $10 billion companies. I think we're going to start seeing more of that. Speaking of some of our own founders, I think a good example is a founder like Ryan Anderson at Filevine. He's doing really well. In the past, there was a sense I need to sell my company, right? I've kind of hit a certain scale with what this foundation of Utah has enabled me to do, and I'm just going to sell it and go do my thing. And I think if you were to spend some time with Ryan Anderson, he is thinking much bigger. He thinks he can be, as big as some of these major platforms, like a Salesforce or a, kind of an Oracle or whatever. And I think that is the change with some of the founders' mentality, is they don't have the same ceiling they used to. And so we are going to do whatever we can to play a part in that. And I just think capital sources continue to get a little bit better. I don't think there's as much predatory nature. And so I think that also enables startups just to go further because they don't have weird cap structure things that they gotta, kind of unwind and, force them to sell.
Yeah, that used to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
And I still hear about it every once in a while, but
It's still
nearly
there.
as much.
Yeah, those things take years to work through. But that's what I would say. And so I don't know, what else are we noticing?
I would add that the constraint used to be a capital constraint in Utah. The constraint now, to me, feels like a human and population constraint, actually. I think it just by nature of how many people live here, you're capped in how many talented people you will have for each area. One area where, and in fact, I was talking with a friend in the venture community, and she was a great, head of product for a great company. And we agreed that, head of product is a role in Utah that we just don't have a whole lot of talent around. There's not enough density of product talent in Utah. And every company that scales to a certain point in Utah struggles with that. So we end up, opening a Seattle office or a Bay Area office or, whatever. I think to change that, you just need time. I think there's a maturing that comes, and then there are things in life that you just can't expedite, and that might be one of those. Capital, on the other hand, is something that can just show up. Capital is very fluid; it moves very quickly and fairly efficiently. And capital has shown up for Utah startups. I think talent needs to follow now.
That's interesting. That seems like a job for like universities and, our companies themselves, right? Spitting people out and kind of, you have that experience here. That's really interesting.
And frankly, recruiting, right? Recruiting people that are interested in building in a Utah company. And I would even say not recruiting for the wrong reasons. Sometimes we recruit based on, we have the best skiing around, we have the best, and it's like, well, can we just say we have phenomenal work ethic culture? Can we double down on the things that made and have made Utah special, that will continue to make Utah special, and attract those people and attract more of those people? It's interesting, but there's a whole ecosystem forming in Park City with a lot of these people that moved here during the pandemic years, and they stayed, and I think they will build some, I don't know, new culture, if you will, in Utah.
I think we need 10 public companies, tech companies that just are bellwethers, that stick around, the Qualtrics, the Podiums, the Entradas, that become public companies that are just continue to grow and can recruit people and have awesome relocation packages and have, just insanely good product talent. And then, it gives people a safety net. So if their startup doesn't work out, or if this little one that they joined, they can go to an Entrada, they can go to a Filevine, and kind of make just as much money or more, and kind of sit on the bench for a little bit and then come back out. That's what we need. It seems like that is one of the key things that Bay Area had and kind of made them great in the 80s and 90s and continues to this day. That's what we need, I think, in a big way.
Yeah, it does think it used to be all about like Domo, Pluralsight, Qualtrics, and then kind of like that next wave was Podium and Weave and
Divi.
I'm missing a bunch. Yeah, Divi. Divi, which is
Lucid.
Divi's the craziest story ever.
Yeah.
In 5 years, going from zero
Insane.
to $2.5 billion exit is wild. But something we don't do here in Utah, which you're touching on, is we don't build generational companies for some reason. And I think that's what you're saying. Is like, how do you build like those? Like, how do you build like Salesforce here?
Yeah.
Right. Or Facebook here, or like whatever it is, right? Like Apple here. And it does seem like there's a few companies that might have a chance of doing that
I think
currently exist right now.
I think
We think so.
Yeah.
We talk internally about, making sure we don't miss the next $10 billion company that comes out of Utah. And that company is probably already in existence. But making sure that that we're behind them and make sure that the founder sights are high enough for that kind of aspiration. Because the truth is, retiring on, X $million is no different than retiring on Y $million. with a 5x order of magnitude, if you will. But it makes a big difference for the community. It makes a big difference for the talent that you're able to attract once you are that generation of company.
Yeah. I mean, look at the ripples of, Qualtrics, and now that's transcended tech, that's moved across from attracting people to sports teams to, that energy of not just downtown Salt Lake, but it'll continue to ripple through the whole Wasatch Front. We're all biased to it because I think we're not yet old enough to sort of say, stop growing Utah. We're still young enough to be like, come. Like, let's build. But you see how it has these ripple and downstream effects. And I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah, it's really cool to have one of our own do what Ryan's doing, right? Like, I mean, he's not the only one doing incredible things, but he's obviously maybe one of the more public ones with the hockey. I was just at the hockey game last night.
Aren't those fun?
They're amazing.
I'm loving hockey. I didn't even like hockey prior to this. Now I'm obsessed with it. I bought a Gunther jersey. Just cool. I love that guy.
Yeah, brawls on the ice. Yeah, like, it's so good. You need to get a little pent up energy out. Just go to a hockey game and watch them duke it out. Cool.
It's incredible. So it does seem like there are, like, VC is consolidating a bit. Would that be accurate? Because I remember, like, COVID 2020, 2021, everyone was launching, like, literally everyone, like, was launching a fund or a syndicate or some sort of
VPs,
thing. Yeah. Or like some, like, you could just set it up on AngelList real quick or something like that, right? I don't see that at all anymore.
Liquidity has dried up. I think there's a macroeconomic reason for that, right? There's less money slushing around. That's probably a big reason for that. I think the second reason is, I think VC is just cyclical. People find out whether they're good or not in about 6 to 10 years, depending on which part of the cycle you jump into VC. And I think naturally things will filter in or out. By the way, they're not always fair. There's a huge amount of luck that goes into VC, and we don't kid ourselves.
Yeah,
in that
like, had we not started when we started, like, it may not be what it is, and that's a sobering feeling. I mean, I think it's part of what drives us to say, let's not just be, on paper, great investors the last decade, but can we actually, like, at least semi-prove to ourselves that we're more than just good timing. And who knows? But yeah, vintage, to Diogo's point, like, of all the things that you sort of correlate and ascribe success to for a VC, it's vintage. It's when you started, which is, I think gives us more reason to say, let's be careful about who we're touting and what we're touting. Like John made the comment, this morning of, like, what is Album? All it is this, like, little amoeba that gets to be a part of the real builders, and hopefully it's a good amoeba and not destructive and doesn't come in presumptuous and isn't trying to tout, too much of what we're about, but really focused on the Eric Rays, the Ryan Andersons, the Lance Heydrichs, the Brett Derrick Cutts, and on and on and on. Like, those are the builders, full stop.
Yeah, I would say part of that comment was we're not necessarily company builders like at Album. We're not trying to build some big company and be, us on the headline ahead of the company or something like that. I think it's more, can we be the best service provider to our founders, right? And so that's where we focus our energy is just spending time with founders, opening a few doors a year, almost raising their sights just a little bit and making sure, we can remove a few obstacles if possible.
Yeah.
And, be their biggest cheerleaders.
I mean, think about the best, like, food server you ever come across. One of those people that they didn't cook the food, they didn't even plate the food. They're not going to be eating the food. Somebody else paid for the food. And yet when they can string it together, you're like, thank you for being that tiny piece, and I think increasingly we're like, we could be working at Jiffy Lube, changing oil together, or we could be doing this. And I think either way, it would come down to, like, what's the experience? Do you come out of a board meeting and you say, thank you for not exacerbating the stress in the business right now. Thank you for being calm and steady. Thank you for pulling out a sheet of paper, and not even though we have now granola now to, like, help us, kind of document everything being said, like, put some of that good old fashioned human touch, and whether we're serving a sandwich or whatever, like, we appreciate these industries that I think, service industries, Somebody does that, like the good old fashioned notion of a tip. Before it was just like, you bought your acai bowl and they like have a default 22% tip. Like back when it was earn it. And in our world, that's not insignificant, because what it turns out to be is the trust that the founder has or does not have for you, proximity for them to share things that in best case for us is like when the company's starting to do this and we're like, sweet, can we continue to be a part of it? That's like our modern tip. And for us, it becomes huge. Like it really is like ridiculously special when we get that, but it's got to be earned. Like there's something, it is this delicate founder thing. I think founders inherently distrust VCs, rightfully so,
Yeah. I think rightfully so. Right. And, I want to talk a little bit about that earn it. That's really interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard the answer to this question. I've certainly never asked it. What does it take to be a VC? Like spending time with founders, right? And then we kind of just gloss over that as like, but what does that actually mean? Like you're partly like a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You're partly like maybe for a week you're their CFO advisor or something. Another week you're their hiring. I mean, you've really got to wear a lot of hats. VC is, to me, way different than being an entrepreneur or a founder. It's a very boutique industry, and you're either really great at it or you're not. And you guys have figured out how to be really great at it. And again, I actually would love to hear all three of you kind of give a sense for, what it means to spend time with founders, because all three of you have different kind of skills and assets and ways you address those problems.
Yeah. I'll take a crack and then we'll cycle through. I mean, look, we walk in here and you've got this beautiful golden retriever, right? Like the second time I've been in here, that dog is beautiful. If you own a dog, when somebody who owns a dog or appreciates what it's like to own a dog, how they greet your dog. Mm-hmm. You appreciate sometimes it being permission-based, depending on maybe size and demeanor. You appreciate where and how they scratch it. Are you coming on its head? Or are you greeting it from underneath in a less threatening way? And you also kind of know, like, my dog reads people, right? So it is like, I kind of know, I'm like, oh, you're an anxious person. And that's okay. I'm not like, we all have different demeanors, but there's something about somebody's ability to interact with my dog that tells me something quickly. Whether he's rambunctious, whether he's calm, they just have a little intuition, and then they kind of care. And if they come away and they leave my house and my dog next time is excited to see them, that just tells me something. I think in a very simple sense, like we similarly, at a minimum, table stakes for us is coming in with a little self-awareness for what a founder is in the modern world. And again, even with all the tools that they're availed, it is a high stakes stress, all their eggs in one basket. They don't have a portfolio like us. It's called everything is riding on this. In states like Utah, they may have 2 or 3 kids, that also who need health insurance, right? We've had kids with some real shit in their lives and they need good medical care. And so to go in and just to comprehend that, a little bit of who is this person? What have they decided to put themselves in? Some modern day Coliseum arena where they have a tiger, trying to eat them from behind and a big scary dude that wants to sever them in front of them. I don't think it's war. I don't think the metaphors of war perfectly fit entrepreneurship. I'm not trying to put it on that pedestal, but I am saying at the human level of putting weight on yourself, we see that. That's real for our founders. And so again, in the spirit of like intuiting from another breathing life form, a little bit of who they are and having some knowledge like that, to me, as simple as it sounds, just doesn't fade away or go out of style. And it continues to be the delicacy and thought, I would say, with which we approach, a founder is like, who really is this person? And to let them know, like, our poop stinks as much as yours. Like there's really no difference between us. It's a little bit of timing and where life seemed to put us into this little maze of existence. Julie, what would you say?
I think at the stage we invest, there's pickers and builders. I think
what do you mean by that? What's a picker? What's a builder?
A picker is somebody who can take all of the data. We don't have a lot of financial data. I'm talking like, what is this trajectory, this human, the founder, And
which is a crapshoot, really.
Yeah. How good are they at telling a story and getting people, kind of in their religion of their startup, right? Both investors, employees, customers. The picker can, kind of suss that out and say, yeah, I can get behind this person. And I think this is just a special human. And then the builders, I think are the types who have deep operating experiences, were founders themselves, who, almost pride themselves on saying, hey, no startup's perfect, but I think if I just roll my sleeves up and if I kind of tweak this a little bit, I think you find that with incubators and stuff like that. They kind of pride themselves on where they can add value. I think that's great. I don't think it's always met with, when reality hits, it's generally they don't bring as much value as they think they should or they thought they would. Both from the founder doesn't feel that value. I think they actually feel like more that it's meddling. At least that's my personal feel. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's not binary. There is a gradient in all this. Like we do help build a little bit, but I'll speak for myself. I feel like I'm more of a picker where I meet with a lot of people. I think about it to the annoyance of these guys. Sometimes I'm a little bit of a slow decision maker. And I like to sit on decisions a little bit and gather as much data as I can and then move forward. But I think that is a little bit how it shakes out in the early stage for most investors. You kind of, you lean towards one of these types of styles. Mm-hmm. I would say Album overall is more pickers, and we all have our styles. I think I'm more the logical. He's more the heart. He's more I like to call it sex, romance. He likes to get behind a kind of a story that he can really get passionate about. Diogo's our truffle pig who, connects with founders and can sniff anything out.
Me and Diogo for sure are the ones like coming in like, we have a deal. We're doing this tomorrow. And John would never say that. John would say, oh yeah, like I have this deal that might be good. He's just a patient process.
So, and I think it's one thing that's made us great. And I think you'll find that in every partnership is you want to have a lot of different viewpoints. And that's what, so solo GPs, I give them a ton of credit. I don't know how they do it. Kind of going out on these, 10-year decisions on your own, not suffering from, because we all have confirmation bias and we all have, we want to believe all these things are going to work out. The truth is they don't.
Yeah.
So that's how I would kind of view that.
That's a good point. We were more built for partnership because I would say each of us, we've talked about like Album, sans one of the three is not quite the same. And we should be careful of that because our LPs might be like, hey, that could be a problem. We don't have this huge bench of principles in this business, but it also is a recognition of like, we somehow fit each other's pieces. There's been moments where even, I would speak for myself, like my craziness, John can say like, just be you. Like, we're not here to fix Sid. Like you're going to piss somebody off once every 4 months and just don't.
3 months.
Every 3 months, just don't pick fights with the wrong bully, Yeah. You were saying, Diogo?
No. To me, the notion of, what it takes to be a VC is based on understanding that we sell capital for a living. That might sound counterintuitive, but essentially we exchange capital for, equity. When you kind of distill it to that, it becomes a lot less complex and a lot less intimidating. Basically, we're here to sell you money. We want to give you money when you don't need our money, right? A lot of times that's when we want the most to give you money. I think the general mistake in the VC industry is to try to fancy themselves that they do a lot more than they actually do. That someone was an incredible leader of, something at this other company, and they come in and try to tell you exactly what you should do in your company. And that company was selling shoes and you're selling, bed sheets, just very different industries, even within consumer, right?
Mm-hmm. Even with us, we were all in tech, but now it's been 10 years by definition.
I was never in tech. I was in Bluetooth speakers, which is, the unsexy cousin of tech. But maybe
the point is like the blueprints age and to pull out the old blueprint, just blow the dust off and say, here's how we did it back then. When you have modern tools AI, foremost among them. It's almost like that's not the point. The point is some level of empathy, but also a curiosity.
So we sell the capital, and for us to just sell you the capital and get out of your way is often more helpful than selling you the capital and camping someone at your company. And that's, I think, what happens naturally with firms that have junior staff. There's just a lot of empty calendars that they need to fill. And so they'll have people come in and do these, wild reviews and try to help you with this or that. And in the end of the day, are you the right founder or are you not the right founder? That goes with what John said about picking, right? Did we pick and make the bet on the right person? Did we exchange capital for equity in the right with the right party? Because if it is the right party, get out of their way and they'll make it happen.
That's right.
I would say one thing that I think we would all be aligned on. We have a certain level of, we know where we sit in the stack. Sid kind of alluded to this. And I think a lot of VCs piss off a lot of people because they view themselves as a little bit above, because it feels good. You got money and people want to talk with you. So
yeah,
it's just naturally, it just feels good, right? Everybody thinks I'm so great. I think we all know we're not that great. And so there's a certain humility where we try to approach every meeting with, we are lucky to be talking with this entrepreneur who is putting it all on the line. We don't want to waste their time. We're not throwing junior staff at them. We're not running them through unnecessary diligence just because we can. And so I think that comes through, and we try to be, we're not always perfect at responding to people and saying, hey, we're not in or we're in, but it's, there's a certain level of respect that we give a founder and try not to run them through a bunch of wasteful cycles. So I think that kind of comes through. And then with our founders as well, you mentioned your story about the board meeting. Go talk with our founders. I think that's where we have differentiated is we try to be a shock absorber. I don't know if that was mentioned yet in this conversation, and kind of bring their aspirations up just a couple degrees, right? Because they feel safe. They've got a good foundation to be on. They're not nervous about how we're going to read. So that makes a big difference in a founder's life.
How do you avoid sitting on too many boards?
Oh man,
yeah, that's a great question. And that's you hit on the limitation. The biggest limitation we have is we like to say
there's only 3 of you.
Yeah, we back things that we hope can wildly scale. We do not scale. So part of what you mentioned, is if we are finite, the 3 of us, how many deals do we do a year? How many deals do we do per fund? How big is our fund? So we hard capped our last fund at $100 million because we just did the math and we say we can do 20 deals per fund. That means on a 3-year, if you deploy that over 3 years, you're doing 7 deals a year. We each do 2-ish, maybe 3 deals a year. But then with let's say 2/3 to whatever of those you're taking a board seat, well, do your boards just grow into perpetuity? We think that's also a flaw to just say the board, everybody on the board from the seed stage should stay with that till IPO. It's like, wait, what? Like, why? To feel good? So I can say I was on the board of a publicly traded company. So we don't think that way. We think that it is an organism that is changing and you need a different set of claws. You need a different, learn skills when you get bigger. And so we will, as often as we go onto a board, cycle off a board. Not just, for a few reasons, because one, it's, you don't want dead weight. We've all been in board meetings, speaking to 3 of us, where it's like, why are there 10 people here? Why does that recent VC have their junior person there? It's like sort of saying every time you have dinner with your wife, she's bringing her mother-in-law. It's like, it's cool. Let's get together. No. Let's get together for, or at Thanksgiving. But why do you have multiple people? Are you not smart enough to capture this?
And Sid, why am I here?
We've
asked that question.
And I'll say that to founders, like straight up, like, I'm your Huckleberry for 18 to 24 months. After that, you're going to have a business that was bigger than I grew my business. So tap me for all of that. And at the right time, let's discuss, should I cycle off? Did that with a founder recently. And he's like, stay on a little longer. Great. Like we're still going to be there when you need us, but let's not fancy ourselves more than we are. Or maybe better said is just, we're a very specific thing. And because of that, there's a lot of things we aren't. We are early stage investors who don't scale. It's cool at the early stage. You may find us less useful later on, What would you guys add to that?
I would say our portfolio management, we've done a little differently too. We've exited a lot of positions. So Fund 1 had a lot of deals at 31. We're not on the board of any of those, and we only have 3 assets left. So we're out of most of those. Fund 2.
And we're trying to rep it up, by the way.
We are.
But the way these things work is you have like a 10-year fund. You can extend them, but you can also be the seed fund that's in year 17 managing, which is robbing us of value we can give current founders. So it's like, in order to give the next founder, in order to look a founder in the eye and say, I think we can be the absolute best partner for you. It's like, well, how many boards are you on?
Yeah.
You know,
it's
like there's real questions like that.
Yeah.
The average life of a fund, I believe, is 16 years now. That could be wrong, but it's definitely plus or minus a year and a half. And we don't want to be that for these very reasons.
Yeah.
So, I get worried when, a founder takes money from somebody who's on like 30 boards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if you should do that.
Yeah.
Even if they're great. I'm like, you should just like.
Maybe that's good. They'll stay out of your way, hopefully. But the problem is they're normally maniacal and they'll, try to be in your way.
Do you guys hop on the board of every company you invest in?
Most of them.
High percentage.
Yeah.
70, 80%.
Yeah.
And look, we're not original in some of this. Like you talked about, was it Paul Madeira? Like I'm trying to think of, we watch those VCs who just pass on good behavior. When you see somebody who's made a lot of money and you kind of hold on a pedestal, I think appropriately is like, you've had longevity in this and you've done right by founders and they're completely undistracted, no cell phones, piece of paper, pencil, probably middle finger to AI a little bit in a cool way. Cool. That's just a different experience. That's like the person back to the waiter, the server who like, you're like, are you going to remember all this? And not the one who like says they are. And then they bring you like the pastrami burger. And you're like, wait, I wanted but like the ones who just have that, that little human touch. We've learned that. Was it Paul? I'm trying to think of who it was. There's been a few over the years where we say, we like how you do what you
aspects.
do,
Very engaged, not scattered.
Yeah.
We've limited ourselves, not formally, but 7 to 8 boards each.
Yeah.
And after about 2 or 3 years, we're cycling off. We're either going to a board observer, or even in a lot of cases, it's great just to have our information rights and keep a more informal relationship with the founder, right?
Yeah.
Where we can catch up on a little bit more casual terms and see where we can be helpful, but not necessarily need to be at all the board meetings and approving options and things like that.
Which kind of puts to the test, is the founder sharing info because it's obligatory, they have to from a legal perspective, or are they willing to share because you've earned it? Because that trust, I'm not going to say we've earned it every single time. Like I think I can think of a board that I don't know if I ever earned that founder's trust, and it was kind of elusive for me. But when you do, it's an amazing, it allows a certain level of our ability to scale, because we can both have the discipline to 7 to 8 boards max, but then still the trust where a founder could like tip us of, hey, some things are going really well right now, or they want to go have lunch with us, even though we're again, no longer on the board. It's created an accountability for the 3 of us that it's just, it's evident. You will know, like, for example, if I had a deal I cycled off the board and then they raised a huge round and it had a massive jump and I wasn't there, I didn't know, my partners could look and say, hey, like that was the whole point, Sid. So I think it's a good accountability tool for us to just have our own form of discipline that keeps us in check.
You mentioned something earlier that I've been thinking about a little bit, which is that the models of what it means to start a startup are changing. Remember, like when we first started all of this, all I would hear about is lean startup, lean startup. Like, this is the model. This is the way you build a company. I never hear that anymore. I never hear anything about lean startup methodology and our local guy, good old Paul Ahlstrom with Nail It, Then Scale It. I think a lot of those principles are still there, but I don't think that's the model now. It's my sense. I don't know.
I think in some sense, it's not as formalized. It's kind of just almost been integrated into startups' repertoire.
People just know it now.
They do it. It's not necessarily like some formalized process. It's, but I hear a lot of early founders doing kind of customer research and somewhat validating the idea. But the truth is, I think we're finding founders that already know a lot about what they're doing, right? They have an earned secret, to use, I don't know whose term that was, but they're finding they have a very strong founder market fit, right? So they've already kind of been through a lot of the the searching phase and the validation phase. And so I don't know that we have any, special insight other than that, but we don't hear about lean startup either. But I do think people are coming in very well informed with what their customers are going to respond to. Now there's always little pivots along the way and adjustments, and you kind of have to adapt on the fly. But yeah, I would say you can do a lot with a little these days too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you're seeing seed rounds go big because they've already done quite a bit, or they know, hey, to get to that next milestone, it used to be like $1 million ARR, you're going to raise an A. That's not true. I mean, you have to have quite a bit of traction, not just revenue. Revenue is not the most important number, but a lot of validation to go raise a big round. And so those seed rounds are kind of meaty because you kind of got to go out and compete with a lot of people and do quite a bit.
I think human behavior too is one that wants to capture and codify phenomena, and so you see the startups and how many books have been written, right? How many courses, here's your 7-day course. It's why it can't really be taught in a university. There's beautiful things like Sandbox that we've seen replicating from BYU, because they're really trying to give space for the serendipity and the alchemy, realizing that it's serendipity and alchemy, that there's something that'll never be perfectly prescribed to start a startup, or we'd all do it. So you always have to wonder when somebody's coming out with a book, like, we'll never write a book. I would be embarrassed, one, because I haven't done anything that great, but also like, what are you going to tell us? You better have something special, or better be super authentic, but please don't be like, there was 7 steps to highly effective people or whatever, which I think at its time probably was good.
Steps.
Yeah. What was it called? Seven habits.
Which was great.
Yeah.
It was a great book at the time.
Great book. Good family. Go Brit. Covey. But what were we talking about?
Books.
You will never write a book.
Like, is there like a standardized way to do a startup?
Yeah. And so I think you could say, there was a time where, yes, some of the aspects and the framing were captured in lean startup. I think what we're going to find with time, just kind of like lowercase science likes to say, oh, it turns out, this water's bad at this time of day, or you better filter for that. Or one day, when I was a kid, margarine was good and can't believe it's not butter. And I remember we would buy that. Now it's like butter's back in vogue and go to ghee now and like all this stuff. It just seems to move around. I think what we're going to find is, my feeling is there's just always some level of a human that feels something visceral, and somehow in their brain, there's this little synapse that connects, and they're like, oh, that needs to exist. Or wait, that is broken. Why would we have taxis as a way to do this that stink, drive crazy, and I don't get them coming when I need to. And so there's got to be a better way for this. So somehow in what we do, you can never really vacate just good old fashioned curiosity and seeing somebody where you're like, geez, this person's a little crazy. I mean, our founders, above all else, we have to say it carefully, they're kind of crazy. They don't think the same.
You kind of have to be crazy.
Yeah, they didn't read a book that laid it out. They're not going back like, wait, what are my notes on that? They're just sort of following this gut. And it sounds opaque. It kind of is, but it also is super real. When we say truffle pig and Diogo, it's almost like he can sniff something out, and it's proven itself to manifest now enough that you go, keep doing your thing, Diogo. I don't know if you have to be born in Belo Horizonte and have had your experience to do that, but just keep doing it, Yeah.
Will you tell people, because Sandbox is an incredible program over there at BYU.
Yeah.
My only concern with something like that is you have to go to BYU. Right.
Yes.
And so tell people what Sandbox is. I think it'd be useful for people to hear that, because they really are. It feels like they've hit their stride over the past 2 or 3 years too.
Yeah.
Like, it's really an incredible program.
Yeah. No, shout out Chris Crittenden. I mean, I think at the highest level, he said, look, we need to create some serendipity. We do need to curate for ultra curious, smart people. Smarts can be gauged in a lot of ways. It's not just book smart, of course. Let's put them together. Let's give them the space for this in terms of just hours in the day, but also have a mode for getting credit for it so that it kind of fits into both the framework of college credits while also allowing for creativity and just all the chaos of building a startup. Let's put them in front of people who can give perspective. And I think he's done a heck of a job with that. It's become almost a feeder to Y Combinator. And
it's incredible.
It is. And now he's scaling it to other schools. UVU has it. I believe it's going on at the U. I know he's doing this outside of Utah. We'll see. Like it's a hard game. The accelerators are a hard game. We could tell you 20 ways that they can go wrong. Not because we're critics of them, just we're observers. I was an investor when I came back to Utah in Boom Startup. I made no money out of that, but I learned some things and I don't regret it because I think it was as much, I don't want to say philanthropic, but it led me inadvertently to what I do, which I'm super grateful for. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as Sandbox goes, I think you nailed it. It just finds really curious people that, otherwise wouldn't have made collisions with other people in a multidisciplinary way. So it's kind of looking across, because I think the ones of past were, a little more focused on the business school, which is great, but the best startups are not always and almost never started just by business people. Mm-hmm. It's like you kind of have to have people that are, a little bit more liberal arts or engineering or something else. So bringing those people together, I think, is a good amalgamation of just the top tier talent. Everybody I've met from Sandbox is just, really. We haven't invested in one yet, I don't think, right?
Maybe. I don't think so.
Not because on purpose we're not trying to. We just haven't. I think it's just a nascent program. We are talking with a few, which is good.
Yeah, it seems to really be hitting its stride right now in terms of like its prominence and what like it's kicking out and things like that. But they're not taking equity, right?
I don't think so.
No.
That's a huge difference from any other accelerator, right?
That's right. Great.
There's that could be the magic of it in a lot of ways.
I think so.
You're not, because it's like people are paying to be a part of it because you got to pay tuition to be at BYU, right? So there is kind of like that friction, but you need some sort of friction, right? Yeah. So it's not the end of the world that, only BYU students can do it or UVU students or whatever, right? But not taking equity as an accelerator feels like
that could be the key. Because I think a lot of people who have gone through these accelerators, not everybody, but they end up feeling like the incubator was a bit predatory. Yeah. It was kind of a raw deal. Yeah. They gave up a lot. Yeah,
they're taking like 7% for $100K.
It is a recipe for capping the upside of those companies. It just is with time. Equity is a powerful tool that should coincide.
That's not true of every incubator, right? Like YC has kind of figured out something, but even their efforts are getting a little diluted. Their programs are pretty big.
Yeah.
I would say YC's a whole different ball game, but I would say like we probably idolize it too much at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, because they see so many startups through there, we get to look at all the big wins, but there are a ton of losses and negative stories and things. That's right. Again, nothing against YC.
No, I think it's the HBS of its thing. They attract enough talented people that but the cohorts are huge. And does HBS make a great, business person, let's say, or did they just attract somebody who would have had that had they gone to Oklahoma State? I think there's also the story in there of even just professors. There's a lot of entrepreneurship 101 and things being taught. And these are good in as much as they, I think, are careful about, sticking to first principles versus, going into something more prescriptive. But that also, we've all taught, and we continue to teach intermittently at universities, and we will not invest while we're teaching, because there's just these little conflicts of scooping up and taking a pound of flesh especially early in these startups. You got to be leery of that stuff. Let serendipity happen. Let the organism morph. And if it turns out to be a venom, like alien that attaches to Brock, whatever, and creates something awesome, great. But you got to let that happen.
I do think it's interesting that accelerators have really not done well in Utah. Kind of not in a lot of places, but particularly in Utah, we don't do that type of stuff. It's really interesting. It's like, all these people, same as you do. Like, what am I getting out of this? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, that gets kind of that. I think that was the downside for Boom Startup was like, you'd go to a few of those things and you're like, oh, we already know all these people. Yeah. And is this the value? And like, and maybe it wasn't. Like, I love Rob and everything that they did over there. But there was like, we're such a, I don't know, like if you're selling like connections to a community of like this secret Rolodex you have, I don't think that works anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think that works.
If the world's too flat, the tools are too available. Go build a startup.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need permission to go build a startup. Just go build.
It also follows, I think it may even be less of, for me, I think my tendency is to be critical maybe of those, and even myself, maybe when I was a part of it, looking back, like to Boom Startup. But I think it also is some level of a reflection of just the individual, meaning, yes, there's something to be said for a place to kind of, okay, that's how a term sheet works. Here's how, when I need to incorporate. Oh, okay, I can't be an LLC. If I'm going to raise money, I need to be a C. Sure, there's that. But again, the world is flat. Information is readily available. But it also speaks to ultimately a human's ability and a founder's ability to at some point just find such deep conviction and self-belief that they don't need external validation. And sometimes they're going to do it different than others did. You know, you talk Divi, like, I don't think Blake Murray was out attending every class. Yes, he had an exceptional person, you know, as his father to, I'm sure, learn from, and great people. But I think Blake was just steely-eyed to his core and doesn't think like other humans. Or that's the wrong way to say it. And you can say it, D, because, you know, you were closest, but he just skips to his own beat. And if you skip to your own beat, you're kind of hesitant. You're not just distrusting others, but what is that? How would you put your finger on it?
There's a problem with information when there's too much information, because you end up with, you know, more noise than signal. And I think that happens in accelerators often, but that also happens in just general startup building. When you see people, you know, caring too much, to go back to the, you know, whether it's LinkedIn or, you know, X or whatever it might be, if you care too much about those things and that's diluting your efforts with your customers, that will do something to you. That is just natural.
Yeah.
So that's
think of the number of newsletters you could subscribe to just around SaaS.
Yeah, exactly.
You could follow you could have 20 metrics. Okay, we need to have these 20 things to measure our business. And that we would tell you, you do not need that early on, if ever. There's probably a few true norths for you. Find them yourself, but what
are the numbers that matter to you, to your industry, to your business, to your customer?
Yeah.
That's a lot more important than what are the standardized, you know, things that people are saying right now.
Yeah. I get a little freaked out when I see like LinkedIn posts that founders do not do this from like VCs.
Oh yeah.
Like, this is how you should approach us. Do not approach us this other way. For me, I'm like, I want to talk to the people who approached you the wrong way.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
It's
but
terrifying.
like immediately I'm like, so what did this guy do? That's cool.
Yeah.
Because they don't all do like this exact same format, cookie cutter thing to try to get on your radar. And if they don't do it exactly the way you like,
Right.
you have some sort of preference.
Why are they saying that? Because they're altruistic and they want good information, because they want click. It's hard to know, but I think you're right. Like, that's where, I mean, these guys know every couple months they'll be like, you know, is there something we should share? And it's like, why? Like there, it's probably already shared by someone smarter than you, Sid. You know, what are we doing it for? And usually it goes back to, why don't we just put in the work to meeting with entrepreneurs and backing those who we've already chosen to back? It sounds boring. We get kind of boring more with time. You know, it's probably why I like find things like wear more jewelry or something, because I feel like I need something new. But we get more boring, you know, with time, which is kind of beautiful. But, you know, it does give space for the real stars, you know, the founders and what they're building, for that to be the magnum opus, for that to be the center of like our world.
Okay, I have two more things because I want to be respectful of your time. We've gone a little bit here. I want to talk a little bit about mental health, because I see that as like a huge issue that's affecting founders and the tech community at large. And I think it goes to this idea that we tie ourselves, who we are as a person, to the company we're building. I see this more and more where like I identify with the success or failure of the company that I'm building. Right. And I think we should probably, I mean, again, I don't know, like everybody has their own journey. But one, what are you thinking about and what are you experiencing with your founders and just general in terms of mental health? Where are we there? And two,
we're probably going to say something unpopular here.
Yeah,
Say what
ahead.
we would actually say behind closed doors, D.
Can I?
Yes. But it's not disregarding. I mean, we know this.
Yeah.
They have a guy who's slightly unstable in me, right? At times.
Well, nothing great gets built by perfectly rounded and stable people. And I think recognizing that is probably as important as it is to try to deal with any mental health crisis that we might be going through, if that makes sense.
That's interesting.
If you want greatness, you will deal with pointy, sharp personalities, unbalanced humans, etc. Now, does that mean that we have no regard for founders' mental health? Absolutely not. But I think when a founder signs up to being a founder, they sign up for the full thing. You literally can't dissociate great company performance from, a slightly tilted mental space of a founder. They often start businesses out of frustration, and it is such a big frustration that they'll go out of their way. They'll quit a job. They'll take a loan to start a business to solve the very problem they dealt with. So it would be really hard to fully dissociate. Is that okay?
I think that's,
I was political.
I think it's
about
absolutely
I think
right.
it's really well said. I think in a lot of ways you just accept it as a fact, and you try to kind of give support where needed, and almost say it's okay to have these feelings. And we've said it with each other's partnership. We're not trying to change each other's partnership. We're not trying to change our founders either.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't want anyone more human suffering than there needs to be at the founder, between the years. But it's in a lot of ways, like that's where being a shock absorber, being someone that they can trust, and we accept them with their greatness, but also their flaws. I think you gain a lot of, it gives them a lot of comfort knowing they've got somebody in their corner who's financially invested, who's, their career's invested in them, and they just care about them as a human.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how we've accepted it in certain ways. We're not trying to cure it. It's a pretty thorny problem.
Yeah, most founders are pretty nuts. Look at Elon, the greatest founder of our time, probably, and that guy's nuts and does incredible things.
And it probably means that you don't necessarily, want to report to Elon, right? As a human, you're probably like, oh, you'd probably think twice.
Or it
about
attracts a certain human that knows that and accepts it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to be a very difficult.
Or you
boss.
do it for a period, right? And that's what I think happens even in Utah. Just to bring it back to one point that you made around what's next for Utah, what's the current state. I think attracting people that are willing to suffer for longer periods of time, because here we do have a tendency to kind of grab an offer and leave in a sense, because we don't want to deal with that mental challenge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the remarkable thing about Elon is how long he's been doing it.
I know.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it comes back to a little bit to this simple notion of trust, though, too, because the question isn't, will you internally be in pain at some point? And that could take on extremes for some people where there could be self-harm or just some level of deterioration that is not okay. The question is, when can that surface and to who? So if you think of having two parents in your home when you grow up, and let's say some beautiful mix of benevolent and some level of rigor parents, like in theory, that would be a place you could go to. Well, I think as adults, you have friends, and then you have some of these people that you can meet. We have them for us. Like we have people for whom they were that like outlet where we could share and they could see us through some of these, our own little times. It doesn't compare, I would say, to somebody deeply struggling with mental health. But again, coming back to, I think, Diogo has founders who confide their hardest stuff to him in marriage, with, some of their own insecurities, even down to like, say prescriptions and things that you might see a doctor for. And it's like, that's part of our hope too, is yes, it's professional, but inevitably we become close to, I just had a founder leave town. He's based in Manhattan, was here with his wife and two kids for a week, and kids were over every night, eating, hanging out. And like, I think in those settings, there's at least a ground where hopefully I would be perceptive enough. And honestly, I've had founders with me who've been like, are you okay, man? So you have kind of a friend in this life who you can safely share something. Sometimes even the sharing of it, like I'm telling you, when John said that to me of like, you know, and I'm kind of like a little bit of self-loathing of like, why do I always get in these fights or why do I this? And he's just like, do you, like, be you. There's something validating about that where you're kind of like, you know, you're a little crazy, but you don't want people to call you crazy. You want to be like, you're crazy, but it's okay. You know?
Finally, let's talk about album and the three of you. I would love if you guys just like talked about, hey, we're signing up for another 10 years at album. We're going into this. A lot of it's going to be focused on Utah and working with each other and how you would like your own relationships to grow from this, as well as just the firm. Because the firm is one thing, right? But what you guys have is really special is the three of you.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What do you want that?
Too,
what do you want that to look like in 10 years?
So it might be good, just a quick priming on what album is. Album's at equal partnership structure. So, you know, the primary value perhaps between the three of us is accountability. If there's one of us who's not pulling weight or who's not, you know, behaving in a way that we deem acceptable or whatever, two can remove a third at any time. And that has been a really stable, as unstable of a structure as that sounds. I think we prefer that to the alternative, which is kind of a, you know, monarch, which is what we have in pretty much every venture fund in the United States, except for a few that are structured the way we are structured. I would say that, you know, we're so young. The reality is from an age perspective, I think we might still be the youngest institutionally backed venture capital firm around. And I think we might remain that way for the foreseeable future. But maybe to think forward, you know, 10 years, we did sign up for a new fund 2.5 years ago. And these things happen in cycles. So in about 18 months, we'll sign up for yet another 10 years in a new fund. We still have 8 more investments to make out of this current fund that we're investing out of, and we'll make 20 more when the new fund closes. The nice thing about having the performance that we've had is there's no shortage of interest in investing in album. So we close these things up in, you know, a month and a half. I think that's what it was last time, which means we're not distracted by fundraising meetings because, like founders, we do have to get our capital from somewhere. Is that good enough?
It's a good overview. I think,
broad brush.
You know, you may have mentioned this, but we're in Fund 4. Fund 5 is coming up. You know, we may grow a little just based on what we think we need to capture the opportunities. But we also mentioned we're not like a big company and we're not trying to grow, you know, raised capital. We're just trying to grow our assets under management and deliver incredible funds. And so we're actually planning on staying very small. Like, you know, raising big numbers feels really good. Comes with a huge responsibility, and you start, you know, kind of having to have strategy drift. And so
you get addicted. You know, others have talked about this. Yeah. You get addicted to the 2%. You get addicted to the management fee just for being around, showing up and building out a team. And what is a team? Again, if you have content people and attending everything, that's just not our game, as opposed to, you know, they talk about it as a 2 or a 20. You know, we're a 20% firm. Like the way that we build, you know, we aspire to is by performing. You know, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
So I think, you know, we will continue to be around. I think all of us want to continue to increase our investment into the fund. So increase, like, you know, there's a commitment that we all make in every fund, a certain percentage. And our aspiration is to continue to grow that. Yeah. Right. And so it's like more and more of our money that we're investing.
That's cool.
It'll never be 100%, maybe in 20, 30 years, you know, if we have one of these $10 billion outcomes, but we really like our investors we've got too. I mean, we truly feel fortunate to have a very small, tight-knit group of limited partners who make up endowments, pensions, nonprofits around the nation. And we just feel lucky to have them. They're very supportive. And they've backed us, you know, across multiple funds now. So,
and they root us in you know, the middle class where we all come from. Like, you know, disproportionately, you know, I would say, you know, a high percentage of Utah's working class, like we are tied to that. And, you know, for people like my mom who, you know, was a public school teacher and draws on a pension, you know, to be a little part of that feels good. You know, that this isn't just accruing. Yes, we benefit from when we do this, to be clear. And yes, we have, you know, wealthy individuals who are some LPs in our funds, but these pension funds, for us, like represent something a little bit broader, and you sort of feel like the headlines happening in the state, you're not too removed from that. It's not just, ivory tower risking, sort of being so separate that you're really out of touch, and you can pay lip service, but we know how you really roll. Like, we hope that we can always keep that. It feels right. It's the AC/DC in us. That was one of our offsites last year, is going and, jamming to some old metal. Like, I hope we never abandon that. Yeah. I think we'll do this. The truth is, like, we'll invest together forever. Like, we'd be hard pressed not to. There's a love and appreciation, and just, it's addictive. Like, we couldn't give it up. We love seeing something that feels like it's light around the corner that we can peek at, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this could be special, and this person, like, they're crazy and I love it,
Mm-hmm.
That will I don't think will ever change.
Yeah.
So who knows? Yeah, we just feel like, and Utah's just so early. We feel like, in some ways we're just getting started.
Well, yeah, I think our networks have just gotten a lot broader. Utah will continue to produce great outcomes. We hope to be some of them, but there's also great companies elsewhere, and we're open to meeting all of them. I think what's interesting is we have had success. We have had many, companies go from sub 20 million valuations to $1 billion. It's been great. We don't want the last 10 years to be our best 10 years. Like, the next 10 or 20 are going to be our best, right? Like, we don't feel like we've hit the pinnacle of success. I think we're really hungry for that next phase. And we happen to, have great LPs, a great partnership, and just an amazing market that's in this new inflection period. So we think our timing couldn't be better. We truly feel like some of the luckiest individuals ever, because we just keep hitting timing really well.
Well, this feels like 2014 right
it does.
now.
Like, it totally does.
Like
22 and 23 were tough.
Yeah.
24 is getting better, and 25 through the next
this
10
feels
feels
like,
really good.
The next crop is happening right now. Well, thank you guys for coming in. What an honor to have you.
Thanks, man. We
Yeah,
appreciate you.